Well, fairy tales always end up with a happily ever after, but somewhere in the middle, there's usually a scene like this.
Long live the king.
I did not like that part. In fact, new research shows most fairy tales are too bleak for kids, with the risk of a parent's death being 5 times more likely than in films intended for adults. But maybe that's a good thing? Is it teaching kids to cope? That's the question. Here for a fair and balanced debate on it, former teacher and parent with the Bill of Rights Institute, Whitney Neal, and freelance writer Jennifer Wallace. Both of you join me now. I thank you for that. So, Whitney, I'll start with you. Is this just harmless to see 5 times more likely to see parents die in these animated films than in films seen by adults?
I don't think it's harmless, but I also think that we need to gauge what else happens in the film. Is the child being exposed to that experience? Are they learning empathy? Are they learning to see characters cope with good overcoming evil, with growing as a person? I think there are a lot of positive experiences that come out of fairy tales that are very good for children, that counterbalance those other experiences.
Okay, so Jennifer, what's your response to that? Do we have nothing to worry about with these films?
Well, I agree, and I have 3 children, 9, 7, and 4, and for my older children, fairy tales are great for teaching about good and evil and loss in the world. But for my 4-year-old, last year I read him Little Red Riding Hood, and for months he had a fear of wolves. And I thought to myself, why didn't I reread this book before I read it to him? I think that we have to look at books and fairy tales and understand that the very things that elicit imagination can also elicit nightmares if read to at too young an age.
So is age the factor here? Is that the defining line? Because I watch it and sometimes I get scared. But Jennifer, would you say, okay, if you just heard that a kid is now afraid of wolves after reading Red Riding Hood, Little Red Riding Hood, isn't that a good thing? Shouldn't they be a little cautious when it comes to wolves? Is that the lesson we're looking for?
Well, I think the lesson, I live in New York City, so I try to explain to my son that there are no wolves in New York City. But I think the lesson that we want to give our kids is that good triumphs over evil, that fear is okay, feeling it is okay. But we have to remember the age that we're teaching this to, and a 4-year-old might not have the capability to understand the nuances there.
Okay, Whitney, what's your response there? I mean, what about death? I mean, having parents die. And I can't get over the statistic. 5 times more likely to see parents dying in these kind of films for kids than in films intended for adults. Is that okay?
Well, I think it depends. You know, we've got to take our role as parents pretty seriously. And we all know our children, right? We know our children, their emotional maturity, what they can handle. And so just use common sense in these situations. Look at the film, look at the context. As a parent, know your children. And I think, again, these stories are good. They offer opportunities to teach kids lessons about many different topics. And as long as we're looking at them through the lens of a parent and the eyes of our child, I think we can successfully watch these and not worry too much.
Well, it's a great debate. I thank you both for joining me. Everyone at home watching, let us know what you think about this.